number is 335-7557. Our next question will be from John Nolan and will be for Mr. Leonard.
We'll start with education. New Hampshire was at the very bottom of the table, this is the national table, for supporting a state university. I think it was about 6% funding. But last year the support was slashed even further. To make higher education for New Hampshire residents more affordable, would you favour increasing funding for higher education? And if so, where will the money come from?
Yes, I would favor restoring the funding for the university system for higher education. Funding would, one of the things would have to be looked at is reversing the cigarette tax, which was done away with in this last legislative session, to the tune of $20 million loss of revenue for the state. There's one place that could be looked at. Other sources of revenue could be reinstating auditors to the Department of Revenue, go out and make sure that businesses are paying what they're supposed to be paying. My understanding is half of the auditors were unfunded. But education is key to getting this economy in the state back on track. Not only the university system, but also our college, community college systems, which right here in Rochester is very effective in training workers currently for the Albany Composite Engineering Company. It's a partnership that's been worked out between the city of Rochester, the state of New Hampshire, and the company that needs the trained workers. So I'd be very much in favor of restoring the funding with promises that New Hampshire students would benefit with some funding for, scholarships. And yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Mr. Cataldo?
I don't have a problem with the funding of the schools. We need to look at the administrative costs of what's happening in these schools. That's what happened at the University of New Hampshire. One of the bills that came in and said to the law the administrative cost, and what happened? Turned around and raised the prices and started laying off people instead, but not in that administrative department. So one of the things we need to understand too, we need to have a company out there, or people overlook the schools and what they're doing wrong. We have an education system here. We had a JAG program at one time. What did the JAG program do? The kids worked a half a day, went to school a half a day. And that's where that 16-year-old comes in too, by the way. So when a child goes to work, and he does give his time, day's the key, he's learning, plus he's going to go to school. And the dropout rate, by the way, decreases when you do that. The University of New Hampshire created a problem. It created a bureaucracy. And that bureaucracy was taken care of this past 2 years. Will life turn around and go far, or even say that they should balance their budget? They should balance the budget. Live within their means like we do, like we all do at home. And that's all it amounts to. Thank you for the question.
Take one more comment. Sure. New Hampshire college students have the highest in the country student loans. And that is primarily because the university system in New Hampshire is on the bottom of the barrel for state funding. So that needs to change. Our state's college students should not have the highest debt of all college students in the country.
I agree. I agree with that. They should. We need to look at it closely and find out why, where the problems lie. Why is it so high? Get up a committee, take a look at it, and see what can solve the problems. And that's how you resolve it. You can sit here all day long and talk about it, but you're not going to go anywhere. You can sit down and find out where the problems are.
Thank you. Next question from Tim Kerman from Mr. Cataldo.
What do you think the government's role is in increasing tourism in New Hampshire, and what would you do, if anything, to promote tourism in New Hampshire?
Good question. The tourism in New Hampshire, what's been hurting New Hampshire the past 2 years, actually 4 years, is gas prices. People coming up here and driving. We have a good ski resort area, we have a lot of places to go. I travel the state quite a bit, I travel the country quite a bit extensively. And I like New Hampshire, that's why I'm staying here. But New Hampshire has a good tourism. One of the bills that I put in back in 2002 is to make our guest areas, as you come in across the border, and have little gift shops there for us so people can come in when they come into New Hampshire. If I had to get a cup that said New Hampshire on it, where do I go? You know what I did that day? To show when I was talking about that bill, I had to drive to Massachusetts. To get a cup that said New Hampshire. But we didn't have any in New Hampshire. Here's what you do. You set up these little gift shops, just like they do in every highway throughout this country, and you bring in more people. At least they'll come home with something. And I have a question, don't come away from my house, you'll see my refrigerator, that's all magnets all over anyway. But that's part of it. And that's how you bring tourism into New Hampshire, make it lucrative for the individuals. We have what we have here because people like it. And one of the problems we talk about, again, would be the Man of the Mountain is gone. I would love to see a perfect new Man of the Mountain put back up again, even if it was plastic. At least we have something to commemorate that particular part of what we have in New Hampshire. But that's part of it. We have a great state. Let's keep it that way, and it will be that way. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mr. Leonard?
Well, tourism in New Hampshire, as we all know, is one of our major industries. It's a huge revenue generator. The meals and rooms tax, people that come to our state and spend money. How would I, as your senator, help that industry? Again, creating an environment or a collaborative effort with economic development councils in the area to help them with advertising, help them with technical support to get the message out that New Hampshire is the place to go. Also in keeping our rivers, our forests, and our lakes clean, pristine, will bring people back to the state. So I believe in the environmental impact and making sure that everything is the way it should be. Recently, who was in the front page of the Sunday Citizen, George Bald, who's the director of the Department of Economic Resource Development, stated that one of the biggest resources we need to pay attention to, which also pertains to tourism, is our forests, and managing the forest in a very good way.
Thank you. If I may do a follow-up on that, please. One of the things to understand too, what happened not these 2 years, but 4 years prior, is what was hurting the tourist industry was the taxes that were imposed. Meals and room tax on a motorhome was one of them. Give me a break. I drove a motorhome for almost 15 years on the road. Never saw anything like that in my life. But the thing is, we need to understand, we begin to get tourists up in New Hampshire, and you have meals and room tax and stuff like that. It's not the way to do business in New Hampshire. And as far as our forests and trees, we're the second in the world as far as per population for trees. Preserve the trees we have in New Hampshire. That's the key, and we will, as representatives of the senators. So one of the main things is tourism is working well in New Hampshire. It's slowing down a little bit because of the recession, of the finance, the cost of the gasoline to get up here in New Hampshire. And here's our problem. We get back to the cigarette tax, that 10 cents, we balance it, by the way. If it was me, I would have turned around and sort of make it 25 cents. Why? We have people coming to New York to buy cigarettes up here. People buy cigarettes with their life, they have to do with it. That's not too money when we cigarette. But at 10 cents, it's all balanced out. Everybody complained about it 2-3 weeks ago, a couple of months ago. It's working fine. It balanced. We balanced the budget, and that's what we did for the last 2 years. And we made a promise to the people that we would balance the budget, and we did. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, to respond to the cigarette tax comment. When the cigarette tax was reduced, there was no increase in sales because the price of cigarettes did not go down. That money was absorbed, was taken away by Philip Morris and some other big tobacco companies. That's a fact, to the tune of $20 million. And not only reducing cigarette taxes so we can sell more, which means smoke more, but reducing funding to education so we can learn less. I don't get it. It's just beyond me. So, if anything, I would be a proponent of increasing the cigarette tax even more, higher than it was. This is a tax 70% of the New Hampshire residents support.
Thank you. The next question is from John Nolan, it's for Mr. Cataldo.
Back to education, local education, Sam.
Thank you, John.
While Rochester is expanding its tax base with commercial shopping centres and industrial parks, towns like Farmington seem to be losing their tax base, which puts more strain on residential properties to fund local education. It is an unsustainable trend, at least in my opinion, especially if state support is cut back. How do you think public education should be funded, and will giving vouchers to parents for private schools help matters, or will it make it worse?
Well, let's look at those vouchers for a minute, John. Where's the money coming from for those vouchers? It ain't coming out of the taxpayers, it's coming out of the businesses in New Hampshire. There's a lot of hypocrisy being sent out there, okay, that we're taking money out of the grammar schools or the high schools. No, it's not. It's come from the business people. And that's what people need to understand, the true meaning of where that money's coming from, the vouchers. It's not coming out of the taxes, not out of people's money. So you need to understand that. It's coming out of the businesses. They're the ones who are putting up the money to give that student an opportunity. I look back at my education and the time I spent to work to get my education in high school. And that's the important thing. I would love to see that JAG program I mentioned earlier come back again, where the students can work a half a day and go to school a half a day. And that helps the businesses too, within the community. And that's what I saw when I was working. I worked within the community with my jobs. Further on, other places I work too. But the thing is, it's a job, and you're going to do your job and do it right, especially getting paid for it. The education that we have out there today needs to be revamped and looked at more closely. And once we do that, we'll have no problems with the economy, John. Thanks for the question, by the way.
Mr. Leonard?
Well, the New Hampshire legislature has a responsibility. They have a commitment to fund education in the state. They're trying to back away from it right now. If they're successful in backing away from their responsibility to fund our towns, municipalities for education, my hometown of New Durham is looking at an additional out-of-pocket expense of $662 per household. Rochester, I believe, is around $1,300. Sam Cataldo's town, Farmington, is in excess of $3,500. These are extraordinary numbers that the property taxpayers cannot nor should not absorb. It is the responsibility of the state to step up, fund education the way they're supposed to.
Mr. Cataldo?
I'll do a follow-up on that. What we did this past 2 years, we actually gave back the same money we did the last 2 years. No different. Nothing's changed. What you need to understand about the taxes that are being paid, it comes from the local community. The schools, I looked at Farmington for an example, I'll give you some numbers. When I moved to Farmington in 2000, we were paying $3,700 for our taxes. It's now up to almost $5,000. Wasn't having anything to do with the state. It has to do with the town. And on the budget committee that I'm on, we sit there and scrutinize every little cent they pay. And before it goes out, we say, this is what you're going to do. Understanding what the school system is happening here in New Hampshire. When I said $8,400 to educate one child at the school I went to graduate, and I saw 289 students graduate for $8,400 a year, and it's $13,000 in Farmington. What are we doing right in New Hampshire, or are we, when it costs that much? We need to be more frugal and understanding. It goes to the local level, and that's what the state has done. It's brought it back down to the local level where it was. It's the selectmen, the budget committee, and so forth, take care of that town. If you have a problem in New Durham, you have a problem in Rochester, talk to your representative, talk to your councilman, talk to the school committee, and let them know you're tired of it. You want that money back where it belongs, to educate those children, and that's the key.
Mr. Leonard, any further? Next question from Tim Kremen for Mr. Leonard.
Would you support an amendment giving legislators the power to overrule the judicial branch in New Hampshire?
Valid question. No, I would not support that. We need to keep a separation of powers in our government. Legislative branch should not be mingling with the judicial branch. Politics do not belong in the judicial branch. We've been warned by some Supreme Court Justice Broderick, Justice Nato, that this is a very, very dangerous path to follow. I would not be in favor of that, no.
In simple, yes. I have no problem with it at all. They're overstepping their bounds, and they're also doing it on the education of the children. And that's part of the problem we're having here in New Hampshire. When that CRC came out, I'm voting yes for it. I hope a lot of other people do too. Thank you for the question.
Next question from John Nolan, and from Mr. Leonard.
Just let you know, Jerry, this is my last question.
Okay.
Mr. Leonard, what are your thoughts on using some of the federal block grant for transportation for rail development, e.g. at Granite State Business Park, and supporting coast, because I know coast funding's been cut back a bit? Or should it all be earmarked for highways and bridges?
I don't think it's everything, that's a tough one. It's not a tough question, but I would be in favor of supporting funding for railways, highways, and block grants for our local transportation systems also. It's very important for our senior citizens, for people who don't have transportation. It's a great way to stimulate our economy by being able to get people out that normally can't get out and do shopping in our malls and areas. Did I answer the question?
Pretty much.
Mr. Cataldo.
John, I haven't any problems with that at all, and I agree with Rich. And I'm going to tell you why. Going to school was a very interesting thing when I was teaching in Boston. I drove down to Haverhill, took the train in, and I'll tell you what a glory that was. I didn't have to fight the traffic. The first day I went down there, I drove. What a mistake that was. It cost me $20 to park my car that day behind the school. There's a school right on Tremont Street. But the thing is, the transit system, it can go all the way up to Concord, have any problem with that. That will save the traffic. Everybody talks about the air being bad and the lower part of New Hampshire with CO2 and all that garbage. Yeah, take the train. It's a lot cheaper and it's easier for you, less stressful. And that was the key I found when I was teaching in Boston. I'm all for it. No problem with that one, John. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you out of questions too, Tim, or you got some more?
I'll give you one. John.
We have plenty.
I think I might have one.
All right. This would be for Mr. Cataldo.
All right. What do you see the balance between protecting our natural resources and promoting tourism?
Repeat that again?
What do you see is the balance between protecting our natural resources and promoting tourism in New Hampshire?
All right, let me think about that for a second. To promote tourism in New Hampshire will bring people in, automatically happen over the years. The biggest problem has been the gas. The gas prices are too high, that's where the problem lies. We have a beautiful state. People come up here to go to the lakes and see the mountains and visit areas and so forth that they've done for years, like I did when I came up here in 1970, the first time they came up. They stayed here. Why? Because of the beauty of what the state offers. The same thing with our oceans, going fishing and having the thing we do. We have the ski mobiles, we have the snowmobiles, we have places to go skiing. There's so much to do in New Hampshire. That's the key. We live in New Hampshire to bring the people in and tourism will increase. But the biggest problem we have is gas. The gas prices have held a lot of people back in the past 2 years. Looking at the tourism information that I get on a monthly basis, by the way, it's improving. And I see the improvement by what they tell me. And that improvement is coming by because of the fact that people are staying here in New Hampshire and then going home. But the key is, they're coming here to New Hampshire and they're enjoying it. Thanks for the question, by the way.
Mr. Leonard?
Tim, could you just repeat that, please?
Sure. What do you see as the balance between protecting our natural resources and promoting tourism in New Hampshire?
Well, I don't have a lot of experience in that that, but off the top of my head, I would say, as a senator, I would definitely be looking to fund the Department of Environmental Services to make sure that our lakes, rivers, and streams are clean. Again, back to supporting a collaborative effort with economic development councils in the area. I'd be looking for input from them on what they would want to see done. It would be something I would need to look at a lot closer and get more information from, so.
Maybe
That's the best I
we'll
can.
follow up on that if I may. One of the things the Department of Environmental Services, it does come to our committee, we get a lot of information about the lakes and streams and so forth, and the environment. We have clean lakes in New Hampshire, by the way. When I bought my house, the first thing I did was check my pond. People talk about they have problems. My pond was reading 7.0 on the pH scale. That's good water, and New Hampshire has clean water. The biggest problem we have is going back in the 40s and 50s. Looking at the coal power plants coming in from Pennsylvania and drop a lot of acid rain into New Hampshire. And that was our problem at the time, but that's gone. New Hampshire's cleaned up itself. Tourism will continue going and growing in New Hampshire. Thanks for the question.
Mr. Leonard, anything more? Well, amazingly, John, you got some questions now again, don't you?
Yes, I do.
We had a few phone call questions, and so instead of me asking them, I gave them to the panelists, so go ahead, John. Your first question from that lot is from Mr. Cataldo.
From an unknown member of the public. We hear constant discussions about spending for fire, police, schools, roads, bridges and healthcare, but we hear very little about spending on mental health issues. Regarding mental health, what do you think the state is doing well, and what should we improve on, and where will the funding come?
I understand the question, John. Looking back at the mental health problems we've had in our state, and the funding is adequate, by the way, what we're doing. I've sat down with the people who come into the sessions and so forth, and listened to what their problems are. What you have to do is listen and understand where the problems are coming from. They want to live the same way we want to live. Right? It's the key. Give them the essence and time to understand who they are and what the problems are. The funding is there for them, whether it's from the federal government, from the state. The money is there. There is enough charity out there too, that's another source that I help these individuals out. But the money is there. I don't agree that there's not enough money for us to help them out. But there are a lot of places you can get it, and it's done properly. But again, I work with them, I see them, I have no problem with the children who are out there. But you have to understand, when I go to a fundraiser and I see only 2 representatives that are out of 68 or 38 we have in Rochester, we got a problem. You need to get out there. And that's one of the important things as a senator, and I do as a representative. I go to these functions. You need to attend these functions to find out what's going on. And when I go to a function, there's only one person out of 425. Something's wrong. And that's what I do. And as a senator, I'll continue doing that. Thanks for the question.
Well, from my perspective as a healthcare worker, pharmacist, I do see a need in our community for proper funding, proper availability of mental health facilities. It's probably not properly funded. I haven't been involved in the funding for those services. But I would be in favor of looking at the taxes that were imposed on our hospitals past year, significant taxes that are compromising their ability to offer some of those services. So that would be, and also looking at reimbursement rates for those types of services. That would all be open for review. So I would be in favor of funding, supporting mental health facilities. A lot of these people, our family, our neighbors, possibly end up as prisoners in our penal system where they don't belong. They really need to be treated on an outpatient, inpatient basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tim Kremer, a question for Mr. Leonard.
When deciding on how you will vote on tax-related issues, how much weight do you put on the impact of those decisions on the local tax burden? How will you evaluate those questions?
I pay taxes, and pay a lot. I know the burden that we're all facing taxes, tax-wise. It's a tough economy. I would be looking very, very cautiously downshifting or putting any more burden on the taxpayers that they already are shouldering. I'd be looking at those issues very, very cautiously with that in mind.
Looking back at the last 2 years, we walked into a deficit of greater than $890 million. So 90 fees and taxes were imposed. We corrected over 50 of those, taxes and fees, and we balanced the budget. That's the key, and I'll continue doing that work in the state senate. We need to balance our budget. The state needs to do it. We do it at home, so does the state.
Thank you. Next question is for Mr. Leonard from John Mill.
First question all night is under 20 words. Do you think state spending is too high or too low? And specifically, where would you add or reduce spending? Good luck with that.
That's a trick
They
question.
represent the $50 rather than $100 a year.
I don't know if it's too high or too low. I think state spending needs to be exactly what it needs to be to provide the services that we need. Not a penny more, not a penny less. It's a complex process that people much smarter than me are still trying to work out. But I think the size of government, the spending of our budget, our budget is our wish list, this is our priority list. We'll have to figure out what our priorities are and go from there.
One of the advantages of being a representative or even a state senator is you get a lot of paperwork coming into your home. And one of the paperwork we got just recently was a book on the resources of what's happening throughout all the states, including New Hampshire. New Hampshire's ranked very, very high, by the way, as far as the taxes and the living conditions compared to the rest of the country. Even the income per capita is the same. It's even better than a lot of other states. We're living pretty well here in New Hampshire. We have the life of freedom to do what we want to do, live what we want to live, and we're doing that. New Hampshire is a great state. It's working within its means, and that's the key. Don't cut anything. Everything is working well. But to sit down and look at everything before you do it. Have the heart to say, okay, what can we cannot spend? When you do that, then you're going to have a better life. One of the things I read in that book is New Hampshire is way up there as far as economy and the neighborhood. It's a fabulous state to live in, by the way. Thank you.
Next question is from Tim Crummin for Mr. Cataldo.
Question 2 adds 2 sentences to the end of Article 73A of the New Hampshire Constitution. The legislature shall have a concurrent power to regulate the same matters by statute. In the event of a conflict between the statute and court rule, the statute, if not otherwise contrary to this Constitution, shall prevail over the rule. Please describe the purpose of this change to the New Hampshire Constitution and why we should vote yes or no.
No, I have a problem with that. I'll be honest with you. I voted for it in the committee. I voted for it on the House floor. When it goes to the people, I hope they do vote for us. There's only one CRC that I'm against. We'll talk about that one later, privately if you want to. But I'm going to do it openly. So, but I don't have a problem with that CRC right now.
Well, again, it's a separation of our legislative bodies from the judicial body. The legislature has no business being involved in the courts. Certainly, we don't want the legislature having power over the courts, over the politicizing it, so I would not be in favor of that. I would recommend that people vote no on it.
Let me do a follow-up, if I may. One of the things